This is every book I have ever given 5 stars. Now, that kind of needs to come with an asterisk because I am going to go through my Goodreads, and I've only had Goodreads since January of 2022. But that's also kind of when I started reading again, so it's pretty accurate to my current reading tastes, I think. We're going for relaxed, cozy vibes today. I am fresh out of the shower in my pajamas, and it is 10 p.m. So get yourself a little beverage, and let's talk about some of my favorite books of all time. At the top here, we have books that are very fitting to the sweater I am currently wearing, and that is A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruin. The first book in ACOTAR I gave 4 stars, and then on my reread of it I gave 4.5 stars. But these 2 books, 5-star books for me. I love this series. I love, if you couldn't tell, I'm obsessed with this series as most of the world is. And A Court of Mist and Fury I think is probably my favorite book in the series, but I love the world and the politics and the war and the plot of the 3rd book, so that one's also 5 stars for me, but Court of Mist and Fury is 5 stars for the romance. And then we have Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I read Shadow and Bone a couple years ago, like right when the first season of the show on Netflix came out, and then I didn't read Six of Crows until last January, and I can't believe I waited that long. I love these books so much. I love these characters so much. If you don't know what it's about, it's basically this group of 6 outcasts set in the Grishaverse, so everyone kind of has these like magic powers, and these outcasts are planning a huge heist at like kind of a rival country, I guess, because they have something that is like kind of a danger to the rest of the world. And the found family in this series is maybe the best I have ever read. Thank you, Lee Bardugo. And then we have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is a book that really surprised me because I went into it for some reason thinking I wouldn't like it. I don't really know why. I think it's just because literary fiction is not generally my favorite genre. I don't know if it's literary contemporary fiction. I don't know the difference between those. But this book I devoured. I have such a vivid memory of sitting in my backyard in the sun with iced tea and reading this book. It's such a character-driven, interesting, beautiful story, and I would reread it, which is always a sign that it's a good book for me. And then we have House of Earth and Blood, and I'm pretty sure House of Sky and Breath is going to be on here too. I talked about this a bit in my House of Flame and Shadow reading vlog, but these books I read in September of 2022, and I loved them. I gave them both 5 stars, and I'm trying to figure out if I have changed as a person because the 3rd book was kind of disappointing to me, and I didn't really connect with the story or the characters as much. But I think I might reread this at some point and then see if the 5 stars still hold up. If you don't know, this is Sarah J Maas's first like full adult fantasy series, I think, and it's like an urban fantasy, a pretty complex world, and it follows Bryce, who is basically trying to solve her best friend's murder with an angel named Hunt. She is half fae, half human, so it's this world that kind of has a bunch of different species. There's like mer people and fae and shifters and humans and angels and the Asteri, who are like the very big scary rulers of this world that we're trying to overthrow throughout the series. And then we have book 3, 4, and 5 in the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan. This is set in like the Percy Jackson universe, and it follows Apollo, who was punished by Zeus for something. I can't remember what he did, but he's punished by being put in a human teenager's body with basically no powers, and he has to do like quests. I don't really remember these books. I do remember something very dramatic happens in the 3rd book that is kind of world shaking to the Percy Jackson universe, and if you haven't read this series, then you're gonna read the next Percy Jackson book, like The Chalice of the Gods, and be like, what happened? But this is the series that got me back into reading. I read this whole series January of 2022, and I have not stopped reading since then, basically. And I just loved this. It felt a bit more adult to me than the other Percy Jackson books, which I really enjoyed because I am an adult now. But it still had like Rick Riordan's classic humor and charm, and we got little cameos from all the characters from Percy Jackson in this. So it was just a very well told story in my opinion. I think I gave the first 2 books 4 stars. Again, I don't know if I would necessarily give these 5 stars now, but I have so much love for this world that I think just in nostalgia alone, these books would be 5 stars for me. Next we have Tower of Dawn, which probably sounds really random and strange to people. This is the only Throne of Glass book I gave 5 stars, and thinking back, I would probably also give Kingdom of Ash 5 stars because it's like the final book and it made me cry, and you see all these characters come together, and it's such a developed, intricate world with such a great cast of like found family characters that I love so much. I didn't love Selena. I'm gonna call her Selena if you haven't read it. Didn't love her at all throughout the series, but I love Kale. And again, unpopular opinion, I love him, and this is his book, and that's why I gave it 5 stars. To me, this book was such an interesting character study. I just feel like it was the redemption arc I wanted for Kale after all the shit that went down in the previous books. And then we have Hellbent. This is the second book in the Ninth House series. I don't know if, I assume there's gonna be more, because if I recall, I think Hellbent ended on a cliffhanger. Again, I don't remember much about this book, to be honest, but I love Leigh Bardugo, and this is a very interesting kind of urban fantasy book, and our main character, Alex, is part of this like society that keeps other magical societies in check so that they're not like just killing people and stuff and experimenting on them. And it all takes place at Yale, and it's really interesting. It's definitely a slow start to the series. Ninth House, I think I gave 4 stars, but Hellbent, you're like fully in the story. I love the characters, and I love the like hints of romance in this book, and I love any book where characters go to hell. Based on the title, I don't feel like that's not really a spoiler. And we have The Flatshare by Beth O'Leary, and honestly, I think I gave this 4.5 stars when I first read it. Then I went back and I upped it to 5 stars because I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it, and I hate that this was recommended to me by ChatGPT. I hate it because it's one of my favorite books of all time. It's such a beautiful story, and it's like a romance, but it's also more like literary women's fiction, like kind of Emily Henry vibes, where the romance is like a big part of the story, but there's so much more to it than that. And both of these characters are so complex and flawed and loving and just perfect together. It follows Tiffy and Leon, who are sharing an apartment, but they never really meet because Tiffy works days and then Leon works nights, so they start kind of communicating through post-it notes that they leave around the house, and they both kind of have their own stuff going on that they're working through, and it's so good. Then we have House of Sky and Breath, like I said. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I think it's only the first book that I gave 5 stars. This is, to this day, one of my go-to book recommendations to someone who wants to get into reading but they don't know where to start, because I feel like this is such a universally loved book. It's so fast-paced. There's little bits of romance, there's bits of mystery, there's bits of humor, but it's YA, so it's not like crazy dark, and I feel like it's just a really like universally enjoyed book. I flew through this series. I think this might have been the book I read after I finished The Trials of Apollo to keep my newfound love for reading going. It's basically a series that follows Pippa, who is trying to solve a cold case from years ago where someone at her school was murdered, and then her boyfriend was blamed for her murder, and Pippa is like certain that this guy didn't do it, so she's trying to solve it, and she ends up working with his brother, and it was great. Then we have Verity by Colleen Hoover. Maybe controversial. Don't know if it would be 5 stars now, looking back on it, but I read this book in a day. I read it in one day because it's crazy. Like, things just keep happening, and I really like the ending of it. I think it's really interesting. It's very open-ended. It's very up to interpretation. It was really cool reading like people's theories after I finished the book. For me, this is like by far my favorite Colleen Hoover book. I feel like it's a bit different from what she normally writes. It's more of like a thriller, almost like paranormal-esque book. Like, it was very creepy. And then we have Loveless by Alice Oseman. I've talked about this a few times in various videos, but I love this book so much. It is about Georgia, who has never been in a relationship, but she loves reading like romance and fan fiction and stuff, and she's just waiting for her magical romantic moment, but then she kind of realizes that maybe she doesn't even want that, and she's learning what asexuality is and aromantic is, and it's a very, very heartfelt, messy story about love and friendship and the power of platonic relationships, and this book made me cry. I think it's such good representation that you don't see very often, and a very cool take on like a romance book, because the big love of this book really is friendship. And then we have Heartstopper, volume 3 and 4, and I think volume 5 will be on here as well. I love Heartstopper. It's so cute. It makes me so happy. I think I gave volumes 1 and 2 4 stars, and then 3, 4, 5 stars. They deal with some like heavier topics in the later volumes, but I think that Alice Oseman handles this with such care and so realistic to how it feels to be a teenager and be experiencing these things. And she tackles kind of dark topics that lots of people deal with, but with the perspective that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. And then The Summer Broken Rules by K.L. Walther. I have to be honest, I don't think I would give this 5 stars if I read it now, but I think this was one of the first romance books that I read when I got back into reading. And I was like, hey, I loved that. That was so cute and fun. And it is cute and fun. And this is a very good romance book. I highly recommend it. Really good summer vibes. It's basically about this girl who's going to her family wedding, and they play this huge game of assassin at like Martha's Vineyard, and she kind of starts to feel something for one of the best men. I don't remember that much about it, and I don't know if it's 5 stars. Then we have Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, one of my favorite thrillers of all time. I think the twist in this is crazy. Honestly, I don't really remember what it is. Like, if you held me at gunpoint and asked me what the twist in this book is, I don't know if I could tell you, but I remember being shook when I read it. And I haven't had many thrillers where I had to like put the book down and process what had just happened. And this, and then The Silent Patient, I think are two of the ones where I was the most shocked, but where it didn't feel like a cop-out or like it came out of nowhere. Like, you can kind of look back and put the pieces together, which is really cool. And then we have The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Again, I don't think this would be 5 stars anymore. I also don't really remember what this book is about. It takes place on an island. It's a wedding on an island, and then the island gets cut off from civilization because of like a bad storm and someone dies. It's a very classic thriller trope. And again, I think this is one of the first thrillers that I read after I got back into reading, and my ratings kind of got harsher the more books that I read. And then we have Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This 100% I would give 5 stars over and over again. It is a very tough read, and if you are going to read it, I would definitely look up trigger warnings. It was so impactful and heart-wrenching and incredibly done, and she just has so much strength and courage to tell this story. Then we have Heartstopper Volume 5. Again, I love Heartstopper. That's my review says it all. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Going back, don't think I would give this 5 stars. I have to be honest. It was really good. It's a very well written book, a very interesting character study, but all I remember when I think about it is being frustrated at these characters for like the majority of the book. It was just like a heavy book and a lot to process, and I just would never reread this. Book Lovers by Emily Henry, 100% 5-star book. I am gonna reread this summer, I think, because it's been pretty much 2 years since I read it the first time. This is like a grumpy trope in like a small town, but they're both from the big city, and they're in the small town and they keep running into each other, but they were kind of like got off on the wrong foot, so it's kind of like enemies to lovers. The chemistry in this book's crazy. The banter is so good. I love Emily Henry. Final Gambit, The Inheritance Games. This is the 3rd book in the series, the final book in the series, and that's why I give it 5 stars. I am more likely to give a book later in a series 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I gave the first 2 4 stars, and this one honestly just made me really emotional because I was really attached to these characters and the plot was really interesting. It's such a fast read. This series, I flew through this series. I love that Jennifer Lynn Barnes has really short chapters because I feel like it makes the book go faster. I know there's no logic in that, but that's how I feel. Very popular series, but definitely also a series that I think I would recommend to someone that wanted to get back into reading. Then we have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, another memoir. Again, this was so incredibly well done and so well written, and this is also one I listened to the audiobook of, and Jeanette McCurdy narrates it, and obviously she grew up as an actor. She's very, very good at portraying her thoughts and emotions in the audiobook. It was so interesting to kind of hear her story, especially because I didn't really grow up watching Nickelodeon. I was definitely a Disney kid. I didn't know really any of this at all. Then we have Under One Roof, which is part of the... Oh, I don't remember what the full book is called. Ali Hazelwood released 3 novellas and then she combined them. Oh, Loath to Love You. She combined them all into Loath to Love You. And this is the first one, and I loved this one. I don't remember that much about it, to be honest. It just had like a fun plot. She ends up moving into the house of like her deceased professor or something, and she's living with the son. That seems wrong, but I feel like it's something like that. And then we have Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. Again, I don't think this would be 5 stars, but I really enjoyed this book and I think it's very unique. The writing style of this book is really interesting. It's very meta, it's very sarcastic and kind of poking fun at itself and at the genre, but I can definitely see why people wouldn't like this book. It's a very specific voice. Our main character kind of breaks the fourth wall a lot to talk to the reader, and this is just like a murder mystery in a ski resort. Like someone dies and then they're kind of snowed into the resort. Love Theoretically by Allie Hazelwood. My review, once again, says it all. It's my favorite book by her. The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain I liked, but they both kind of blend in my mind. I don't remember that much about it. I feel like this book was such an improvement in like her writing and her storytelling. I liked the characters more in this book as well. It has like an interesting take on fake dating. The main character, her job is to be a fake dater. People will hire her to be like a fake girlfriend for like events and stuff, which was really interesting. And then we have Fourth Wing. Was a little bit late to the hype for this. I read it in August and I loved it. I think like many people, I devoured this book. It took me a little bit to get into, and at first I was like, I don't know if this is gonna be a 5-star book, but it's 100% a 5-star book. It has everything I like in a fantasy series. We've got the enemies to lovers romance, we've got dragons, we have like an academic setting, we have global kind of deeper politics happening in the background, a war on the horizon. Like, this is my perfect fantasy book. Iron Flame, I also gave 5 stars. I think that's more controversial. I understand why people would like it less than the first one, and I think I also liked it less than the first one, especially because there's kind of like a miscommunication thing happening in the second one, which don't love that trope, but it doesn't bother me as much when it's not like the main plot point, and I feel like there was a lot of valid reasons for them to kind of be having the same conversation over and over again, because they kept getting interrupted by like war and stuff, which obviously kind of takes precedent. Love that series. I'm hyped for the third book. Then we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. This book makes me so emotional. I got like a little frame to put up here, and I was trying to think of quotes to put in it, and I wanted a quote from Happy Place, and even just reading the quotes made my heart hurt. I don't know if I could ever reread this book, I have to be honest. It made me cry for like the entire second half. This book I think is probably her most like fiction more than romance book. It really deals with like adulthood and loneliness and growing apart from friends and losing passion and then feeling like you're too old to change. There's so much depth in this book. It really hit me hard, but I love it. Her writing is so beautiful. And that is every book that I've ever given 5 stars. Let me know if you have any of the same favorite books. I would love to know. Or if you have different books, I would love to read some good books. I need to go to bed now. Thank you so much for watching. I would appreciate it if you subscribed if you are not already, and I will hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!